How's it going? So, let me make sure that this feed is going all right. It's supposed to be showing up. There we go. Okay, just making sure. Now, welcome. My name is John, and this is my whiteboard. I like to give talks every so often about topics that I'm interested in that I think we all need to chat about. So what I have right here is just a whiteboard, and what my plan is to draw some things on this that will help guide our conversation. And in order to do that, we're going to use Lord of the Rings to help understand, a number of things. Safety, vulnerability, education models, what is the goal of the church, what role does church tradition have, what do we do with a whole bunch of stuff. It's hard to even summarize it, but what we're going to title this is Hobbit Holes, Faith in You. And in order to do that, let's go ahead and get started with, there's a hill with a hole, and inside of it lives a hobbit. I think the opening line of Lord of the Rings in Fellowship of the Ring is, there in a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. So let's do that. And hobbits have interesting homes. Their homes are under the hill, or at least in this town, it's called Underhill, in the Shire. And they have a front door that looks like this. They put doorknobs in the middle, and we got circle doors. Okay. But this is a grassy knoll, and inside of it is a hobbit. A hobbit is like a halfling or a small-sized creature. Looks very humanoid, human-esque. And in Lord of the Rings, there's Bilbo. And Bilbo at one point goes off and he has his own adventure. And while he's doing that, there's rumors circulating that he brought back, once he defeated the dragon, some of the riches that the dragon was holding. So let's draw a treasure chest. Here we go. And there's tons and tons of gold in there, and there's riches all over the floor, or at least that's the rumor. And Frodo, at one point, he needs to leave. So what he does is he leaves all of his property, all of his riches, all the things that he had, he leaves them for his nephew. Eventually, just like what happened with his uncle, Frodo has a wizard come and visit him. And this wizard says it's dangerous business walking out your front door, but essentially it's time for you to have your own adventure. So let's draw a wizard. This is the figure of Gandalf. Let's see. Let's do it like this. Right? And he's got his little wizard staff right there. But essentially he says, come on, it's time to go have an adventure. And so he takes Frodo out of his inherited home, where supposedly there's all these riches. But up there in the world, he's going to experience clouds and rain and thunder and lightning. And let's draw like a troll or something. This is a good troll, right? But there's danger up here. So here we go. Using this, let's see if we can have a conversation about a few things related to faith. All right. So down here, under the ground, we have, safety. It's safe. But above ground, where the trolls and all the bad weather is, we have, can you even see that? I'm going to say over here, safe, dangerous. we go. Oh, I guess you could see it. That's okay. So you've got safety below, and it's dangerous. But also down here you have supposedly riches. But up here you have, let's say adventure. But above ground you have danger and adventure, right? Okay. Let's use this, and let's keep writing some things out. All right. Riches could be an analogy or metaphor for theology. Now that's great to have theology, but at least in church circles, much of our theology is the result of someone else going off and having their own adventure, having their own experiences of God, and then coming home with some of those riches and having them at their resource to draw from or to spend or to use. What ends up happening, though, is one generation tries to pass on their riches to the next. And there's good and bad in that. The next generation might say, whoa. I don't think I like how you talk about your experiences of God. And so sometimes the next generation just wants to throw it completely off. And they're not completely wrong, because how one person experiences God may not be exactly how the next person does. And we can fall into the problem of expecting that how one person experiences the faith is how another person should. And that can be a problem, because actually there's billions of different personalities, which means there's a billion different key combinations of how God might choose to unlock someone's heart. And you don't want to always be trying to force a key to unlock a heart that really wasn't meant for. Okay. But you also don't want to just cast it all off because it's legitimately gold. It really is riches, right? There's really a lot of it. And so you don't want to just throw it all off, but you know what? You might want to use it somewhat to help inform your understanding of faith. Okay, that's down here though. And we have a word for this in education circles. This is called transmission. And some people think all we have to do is transmit all of the information to the next generation. That is the goal, and that's how you do what is sometimes called, quote, discipleship. I don't think that's true. Transmission of information is not the same thing as discipleship. It might be part of it, but it's not the whole thing. Okay, we've got some of this down here. Up here, though, is something different from theology and transmission model. Up here, we have, right here, yeah, you can see it. Up here is spirituality. And spirituality is inherently different than theology. Spirituality, it's where we get, it builds off the same word as spirit. Inspire, something that breathes into you. Expire, when your breath leaves you. Respire, something that keeps you rebreathing. Spirituality is whatever breathes life into you. You see, and so some of us have got to stop and realize, like, we might be reading tons of Christian theology, but actually start to recognize maybe my spirituality is breathed into by other things. And actually there's a part of that that's totally fine. But up here, we don't have transmission. We have transformation, which is inherently different. One of the problems that we fall into, especially in church circles, especially church education circles, is we mistake transmission for transformation. Simply passing on information to the next generation does not equate, does not mean that they're going to have their lives changed. Now, why is that? What's going on there? Why is it that that's the case? Well, It's because there's a Greek word, telos, which means goal, purpose, or end. And a lot of us think that the goal, purpose, end of the church is to invite people into this safe, really nice space underground that's sheltered from the rest of the world, that doesn't engage the rest of the world, but then we just sit together and we talk and read endlessly, debate even, about theology. And granted, that this is good riches. This is all stuff that's been formed or passed down from previous generations, and that's wonderful. But at some point, we all have to break ground and step up into here where there's spirituality and transformation. So what's the difference? What's going on? Well, down here, everything's safe. Up here, though, things are dangerous, adventurous. And there's actually two types of learning that we need to talk about. Let's try to draw a book, right? So let's draw. Oh, let's do it like that. A book. Now, some of us might have this mindset that studying is learning. Studying is learning. And that's true. I'm not saying that's wrong. But there's another kind, a second kind of learning that can happen. Because books can only take you so far. And listen, I'm a nerd. I'm an Enneagram 5. I probably focus way too much on books to the exclusion of doing this second thing. This is where I need to grow. I totally recognize it. Studying is a form of learning, but it's still down here. It's not up here. So let's do this. Loving as learning is a very different thing. What we have is a difference of education. And also, well, there's something else too. Down here we might say, all you need to do is read the right books and then you'll learn. Everything that you need to learn and then you'll be changed. That's not exactly the right thing to say. It's not even true. You might learn some things that might help change your life and to turn things around a little bit, but you've got to step out at some point, right? Up here though, with loving as learning, there's a different type of schoolroom. It's a different classroom. Down here is safe. Up there is inherently vulnerable, where in our experiences of God, God can wound us. And maybe in that relationship, I don't know, maybe there's a poetic sense that we can wound God as well. But up here, loving as learning is also, it's not just a different kind of learning, it also produces a different kind of content. Because down here, when you're reading books about God, that's wonderful, but you're still reading things about God that were filtered through someone else's earlier experience than your generation. And so what you're doing is actually, you're kind of reading someone else's experiences of God that maybe they put into formula. And we all know formula can seem really dry. But up here, that produces a different type of content, because this is what educational learning. This is experiential. Let me write that down. What do we say? Educational. Educational. But up here is experiential. Boom. We've got to stop and recognize there's two different types of learning, and that means that there's also two different types of content or information to learn. Because it's one thing to read about God. It's another thing to experience adventure and danger and vulnerability and spirituality and transformation with God, rather than being down here with the safe riches of theology about God that's been transmitted to you by other people. You see, what we have here are actually two different types of learning, two different really avenues of the Christian faith, I guess you could say. But inherently, down here is designed not to be the end, the goal, the purpose, the telos. Down here, all of this is actually supposed to be what funds and helps you and I to break new ground and step into all of this. So that's the most important movement. But to be up here doesn't mean that you discredit all of this. This is all helpful. This is all riches. However, there is a ceiling to it. There is a point where you can learn enough. Yeah, there's a point where you can learn enough from books. And at some point, what you really need is soil, not a ceiling. Theology has a ceiling of knowledge that needs to be built upon. And it needs to have the soil of your own experiences where things can blossom and grow. What we have here is also a depiction of a potential problem that we have in church circles. And I mean that seriously. Because if we think that the goal is to invite people into the building rather than out of the building, we will do this endlessly, ad nauseum, and think that this is the goal. Get as many people in, teach them as much as we can, and then what? Have them come back again and again and again and again and again? There is a point at which the pious thing, and I mean that in the full weight of the word, the pious thing is to maybe stop book learning and start doing some loving as learning. And it's in this sense, how do we want to say this? To do this your whole life can be a pious, seemingly good sounding distraction from actually stepping out, from actually having a life, from actually loving God and people and letting that be something that teaches you to step into the experiential. What we have to do is realize this is good, but it's not the telos. But you can't really have one without the other. Or maybe you can at least definitely have this without the other. But all of us have got to stop and realize, where do I tend to hunker down into? And do I tend to discredit one or the other? I mean, that's a question all of us need to ask. But within the Christian tradition, both are affirmed. Theology and spirituality, neither are neglected. Both are affirmed. Both are said to have their place. But maybe this should stay underground, a little bit unseen. And maybe up here is what should be seen in our lives. Does that make sense? So let's wrap this up. I hope this was interesting. Hopefully it was helpful. But what we've got to do is maybe recognize that there is good down here. And there is merit in learning what previous generations have said about the faith and inheriting them and treating them well, to take transmission seriously, but to realize that transmission is not the same thing as being transformed and having a different, newer, vibrant, experiential engagement with adventure and danger and vulnerability in the world and with God and with people. So, last comment. There's a Greek word, parasuo, which is often used in front of that other word, zoe, which is life. Parasuo is often translated as eternal. However, it's far more than that. It's abundant. It's exceeding beyond the limit. I like that one. It can be overflowing. Parasuo means the abundant, overflowing, exceeding beyond the limit life. And what Jesus does is he invited people that he encountered to step out of their boundaries in a healthy way, but to find that life can exceed beyond the limit, that your life can be abundant if you're willing to let the words of the generations ahead of you inform you, enrich you, and help you to have a life of adventure, danger, love, spirituality, transformation, all of these things. So I hope this was helpful. I enjoyed doing this, and maybe we'll do another one in a little bit, all right? So grace and peace to all of you, and we'll see you later. Bye.